My beloved child, God has been watching the weight you carry in silence, the questions that echo inside your heart about why someone who no longer belongs in your story keeps showing up, why her presence feels like an interruption every time you begin to feel the warmth of what's meant for you, why the past tries to push its way into a future God has already spoken over you. You've wondered if it's a sign, a warning, a delay, or a test, but God wants you to hear this with clarity: He's already yours. What belongs to you is not confused. What God tied to your destiny is not wandering. What is meant for your life is held securely in His hands, even when it looks like someone else is trying to interfere. God says nothing can steal what He has chosen for you, nothing can interrupt what He has blessed, and nothing can rewrite what He has declared as yours. She keeps showing up because the enemy knows the blessing attached to this connection. She keeps resurfacing because your person has finally aligned his heart with truth, and the enemy always tries to distract a man who is stepping into purpose. She keeps appearing because she senses, even if she doesn't understand, that her influence over him has faded. What once controlled him no longer holds authority, and she is trying to reclaim a space she was never meant to keep. But God wants you to understand this: when someone is truly yours by divine alignment, no past attachment, no lingering presence, no familiar temptation can undo what God has sealed. He says you have nothing to fear from what circles around him, because what circles cannot compete with what is chosen. You felt confusion because you expected that once God revealed the truth of His feelings, the rest would clear out easily. You thought the moment His heart turned toward you, anything or anyone that didn't belong would fall away effortlessly. But God says sometimes He allows the unnecessary things to resurface, not to scare you, but to show you how powerless they truly are. He lets you witness what tries to return so you can see it fail. He lets you see what knocks so you understand it has no key. He lets you see what tries to rise so you realize it cannot stand. You're not being threatened, you're being shown victory. He's already yours in spirit, in intention, in emotion, in destiny. And that's exactly why she keeps showing up, because she can feel that she has lost something she never deserved to hold. She feels the shift, the detachment, the unraveling of her influence over him. She feels that the place she tried to keep warm for herself has been reclaimed, and she can't handle it. But God says let her show up. Let the past knock. Let old connections attempt their last breath. Because what is dissolving was never meant to remain, and what is rising cannot be stopped. You've prayed for confirmation. You've asked God to show you whether His heart is truly in the right place. You've wondered if the presence of this other woman means He's confused, tempted, or double-minded. But God sees your heart, and He says you are not being played with, you are not being misled, and you are not being compared. He has chosen you long before you realized you were chosen. His heart was drawn to you in a way that defies logic, in a way He cannot explain. She keeps showing up because she knows He is slipping out of her hands, but God says He was never hers to keep. She's only reacting to the absence of a hold she thought was permanent. God wants you to stop worrying about what she's doing and start trusting what He is doing. Trust the spiritual bond He placed between you. Trust the alignment He orchestrated step by step. Trust the moments that made no logical sense but felt divinely timed. Trust the peace in your spirit that refuses to leave even when doubts try to rise. You're not imagining the connection, God planted it. You're not imagining the confirmation, He whispered it. You're not imagining the pull, He designed it. If God called someone yours, then not even the shadows of their past can unwrite the script. When she shows up, He doesn't feel what he used to feel. When she calls, He doesn't respond with the same emotions. When she tries to lure him back into patterns he's grown from, he feels empty instead of excited. God has been detaching him quietly, gently, intentionally, removing the emotional threads one by one until the connection is nothing but a memory that cannot breathe. But the enemy takes advantage of timing. Whenever a man begins to step into something sacred, distractions always try to drag him backward. That's why she appears at the exact moments when he is thinking about you, choosing you, or moving toward you. But even her timing is powerless against God's plan. You may feel like you're in competition, but you're not. You may feel like you're being challenged, but you're not. You may feel like her presence means something significant, but it doesn't. All you're seeing is the final attempt of something that has already lost. You're witnessing the fading cries of a connection that is dying. You're seeing what desperation looks like when it realizes it has been replaced by destiny. She keeps showing up because she senses the crown God has placed on your connection, and insecurity always tries to fight blessings it cannot match. God says stop asking, why is she still here, and start understanding, she's only here because the story is ending. You don't get intimidated by the last flicker of a candle that's burning out. You don't panic at the final ring of a phone call that's already been ended. You don't fear a door that is already locked and sealed. She keeps showing up, but she has no place, no permission, no power. She's a reminder of where he's been, not where he's going. She's a reminder of who he used to be, not who he's becoming. And God says the man he is becoming is a man aligned with you. God also wants to speak to your heart now, to the part of you that's tired of being strong, tired of being patient, tired of watching spiritual battles play out around you. God knows you've been holding your emotions carefully, trying not to overthink, trying not to let insecurity whisper lies into your spirit. He knows how deeply you feel, how easily you love, how fiercely you protect what you value. He knows you worry about losing what feels too good to be true. But he wants you to rest in this: a blessing meant for you cannot slip through your fingers. A man chosen for you cannot unchoose you. A connection ordained by heaven cannot be destroyed by earth. Your person is awakening. He is realizing who you are. He is recognizing what you carry, what you bring, how you love, and what peace surrounds you. He is realizing that nothing he had before compares to what God placed in you. And he's realizing it at the exact pace God intended: slow, steady, deep, unshakable. That's why the enemy is trying to resurrect distractions. But it will not work. God says no weapon formed will prosper, not even an emotional one, not even a familiar one. She keeps showing up because her season is over and she feels it. He's already yours because God wrote it that way. And very soon, you're going to watch everything that does not belong to your story fall away effortlessly. You won't need to fight. You won't need to worry. You won't need to prove anything. God is handling the parts you cannot see. The enemy is only rattling doors that are already locked. Your heart is safe. Your connection is protected. Your future is guarded. And the presence of someone who doesn't belong is only proof of how close you are to the breakthrough God promised. God sees the way your heart has been stretching itself between faith and fear, trying to believe what He told you while battling the thoughts that rise when you see something you don't understand. He knows how deeply you feel things, how sensitive your spirit is to shifts in energy, how quickly you can sense when something isn't aligning, or when something is aligning so strongly that the enemy tries to interrupt it. That's why this situation has felt heavier than it should. That's why every small sign has felt amplified. That's why every time she reappears, even in the slightest way, your spirit reacts. It's not because you're insecure. It's because your spirit recognizes the spiritual warfare happening around this connection. You're not imagining it. You're not overthinking. You're discerning. But God wants to lift that weight off you now. He wants you to understand that what you're seeing is not a threat, it's confirmation. When something is truly over for someone, the enemy often tries to resurrect it right when God is preparing to transition them into something new. Not because the past is powerful, but because the enemy is desperate. She keeps showing up not because she has a place but because she's losing it. She keeps trying not because she's winning but because she already lost. You're witnessing desperation, not destiny. And God says you don't have to fear desperation, it has no foundation to stand on. Your person has already felt the shift inside himself. God has been uprooting old emotional ties, draining out attachments that were built on comfort rather than calling, on habit rather than heart, on fear rather than faith. She represented an old version of him, a version that settled, that compromised, that avoided his own truth. You don't represent his past, you represent his growth. You represent his alignment. You represent his healing, his maturity, his awakening. And anyone tied to his old patterns will naturally try to pull him back. But God says he's not going backward. He's already crossed the point of no return in his spirit. The reason you felt spiritual pressure is because something in him has chosen you, even if he hasn't fully expressed it yet, even if he's still learning how to communicate it, even if he's still finding the courage to admit the truth to himself. God sees the way his heart responds to you differently, how he softens, how he becomes more honest, how he slows down when he's with you in ways he never does with others. He feels safe with you in a way he never felt with her. He feels seen by you in a way she never saw him. He feels understood without having to explain. And that is exactly why the enemy wants to confuse you. If the enemy can make you doubt, it can make you withdraw. If it can make you question, it can make you close your heart. If it can make you overthink, it can slow down the connection. But God says the enemy will not succeed. You have not been brought this far to be disappointed. You have not been given this connection only for it to fade. You have not been chosen for someone who isn't capable of choosing you back. Your person is becoming the man he needs to be for the love story God has written. And yes, the transformation is uncomfortable. Yes, the transition is messy. Yes, old attachments will try to linger longer than they should. But God says don't misinterpret noise as danger. Don't misinterpret temptation as competition. And don't misinterpret delays as doubt. What you're seeing is simply the final unraveling of what no longer belongs. She keeps showing up because she senses that he's emotionally unavailable to her now, that his heart is redirecting, that the connection she relied on has evaporated. He doesn't feel drawn to her the way he used to. He doesn't respond with the same enthusiasm. He doesn't find comfort where he used to seek it. His soul is shifting, aligning, detaching, and she keeps showing up because she can feel what is slipping through her fingers. But God wants you to remember this: what slips out of her hands slips directly into God's plan. You, on the other hand, have been feeling him even when he's silent. You feel he's thinking about you even when you haven't spoken. You feel his energy leaning toward you. You feel his spirit calling out to you. That's not imagination, that's connection. That's spiritual alignment. That's destiny pulling two souls into the same direction. You've asked God, if He's mine, why does this still bother me? And God answers, because you care deeply, and I am teaching you to trust me instead of your fears. You are not losing anything. You are not being replaced. You are not being overlooked. You are not being doubted. You are being positioned. Positioned to receive a love that matches your heart. Positioned to be honored the way you deserve. Positioned to be chosen openly, boldly, fully. But before that can happen, God must clear the last remnants of what He's leaving behind. And sometimes clearing requires exposure. Sometimes God lets you see what's being removed so you can stop imagining it as a threat. He's not showing you what she's doing to hurt you, He's showing you so you can watch it fail. God is also working in him deeply. He's confronting his hesitations, his fears, his loyalty to familiarity, his worry about hurting people, his tendency to avoid conflict. God is reshaping his heart so he can step into the kind of love that requires maturity and courage. He cannot carry old attachments into the future God has for him. He cannot bring old emotional patterns into a connection that God wants to be healthy, peaceful, and deeply rooted. Everything happening right now is cleansing, stretching, preparing. You've been patient, more patient than most people would be. But your patience is not in vain. Your emotions are not wasted. Your love is not misplaced. You are not wrong for feeling what you feel. God sees the depth of your heart, and He says you are closer to the breakthrough than you realize. Closer to clarity. Closer to commitment. Closer to transparency. Closer to the moment when the confusion fades and the truth stands alone. He's already yours, not because you forced anything, not because you competed, not because you convinced him, but because God aligned your spirits long before either of you recognized it. She keeps showing up because her spirit is resisting a goodbye she cannot prevent. But God says her presence has no power over your promise. And soon, very soon, you will see the shift in the physical world that your spirit has already sensed. The clarity is coming. The conversations are coming. The confirmation is coming. The truth will stand, and everything that doesn't belong will finally step aside. God has been preparing your heart for this moment, the moment where everything that once confused you begins to make sense, the moment when the spiritual battle that felt exhausting finally settles, the moment when you realize that nothing that tried to come against this connection ever had real power. You've walked through waves of emotion, wondering why things felt so intense, why the timing felt so spiritual, why the connection felt so purposeful, and yet the past still tried to show up at the edges. But God says this was never about competition, it was about clarification. He allowed certain things to surface so you could see how unshaken your place truly is. What's meant for you doesn't tremble in the presence of what's leaving. What's leaving only trembles in the presence of what's meant for you. He knows how patient you've been, how many moments you had to calm yourself, how many times you swallowed worry, how many times you had to remind yourself not to react to triggers that weren't your fault. You've carried yourself with grace even when confusion surrounded you, and God is honoring that. You didn't chase, you didn't beg, you didn't cling, you trusted, even when trust felt heavy. And that trust is the very reason the breakthrough is already unfolding around you. Your person has been wrestling too, in ways he hasn't spoken out loud. God has been working through the layers of his heart, peeling away the pieces that were shaped by old wounds, old comfort zones, old attachments. He's been realizing that what he felt with her was survival, but what he feels with you is peace. What he had with her was habit, but what he feels with you is alignment. What he stayed in before was circumstantial, but what God is building with you is intentional. He's starting to understand the difference between someone who filled a space and someone who carries a calling. You've been wondering why this journey required so much emotional strength. Why you had to endure moments where doubt tried to rise. Why God insisted on showing you glimpses of the past you didn't ask to see. But He wants you to understand, the reason you had to see it was so your heart could recognize the difference between what once was and what is meant to be. Without seeing the remnants of His past, you might have underestimated the depth of what God is giving you. You might have questioned your worth when nothing was wrong with you. You might have taken His silence personally when it had nothing to do with you. God allowed the old chapter to flicker in front of you for the last time, not to hurt you, but to close it. She keeps showing up because her spirit knows what's slipping away. But she is not the center of this story, you are. And God is making sure you understand that the only reason her presence still lingers is because her season is ending. There is no threat in someone who is only echoing the past. The enemy tries to use familiar people to reopen old emotional cycles, but God is shutting every door that was never meant to be opened again. You are stepping into a covenant-type connection, something rooted in purpose, not attachment. Something that transforms, not drains. Something that elevates both of you, not holds you back. Your person is stepping out of who he used to be. He's becoming more intentional. He's becoming more aware. He's becoming more present. And the reason it's taken time is because God didn't want him entering this connection with anything broken still clinging to him. God didn't want you carrying the weight of his past pain. God didn't want you playing healer for wounds you didn't cause. God wanted him to meet you with clarity, not confusion. With commitment, not hesitation. With certainty, not lingering attachments. And so the delay wasn't a punishment, it was protection. God has been protecting both of you. Protecting your heart from unnecessary hurt. Protecting his heart from repeating cycles. Protecting the connection from interference. Protecting the timing so that when everything finally aligns, it aligns perfectly. You will not have to fight for his attention. You will not have to question his intentions. You will not have to worry about who else is trying to show up. God is removing every shadow that tried to linger so the light between you can finally shine without interruption. And there is something God wants you to feel deeply right now: peace. That peace you've been searching for is settling in your spirit because the battle is ending. The spiritual resistance is fading. The noise around the connection is quieting. You're stepping into a season where clarity replaces confusion, where reassurance replaces overthinking, where presence replaces distance. He's moving toward you not out of impulse, but out of revelation. He sees the difference now. He feels the difference now. And he knows the difference now. He's already yours because God wrote it that way, because your spirits recognized each other before your minds understood it, because your paths were aligned for a purpose bigger than either of you realized. And soon, you will see the proof manifest in ways that feel unmistakable. The conversations that felt delayed will open. The emotions he held back will be expressed. The hesitation that once held him will break. The presence of anyone who doesn't belong in this story will fall away effortlessly. God is laying the final pieces in place. Your patience is about to be rewarded. Your tears are about to be answered. Your confusion is about to be replaced with clarity so undeniable that you'll realize why God told you to hold on. The connection you feel is not accidental. It is not temporary. It is not fragile. It is divinely orchestrated, spiritually protected, and emotionally significant in a way that only heaven could design. And when everything unfolds, when the past finally stops knocking, when he steps fully into your life with openness and certainty, you'll realize that every moment of waiting, every moment of questioning, every moment you held on by faith was preparing you for a love that isn't shaken by what used to be. A love that cannot be challenged by old attachments. A love that stands because God built it. He's already yours, and nothing, not her, not timing, not fear, not the enemy, can take away what God has written with His own hand. The story is shifting. The final distractions are disappearing. The past is stepping aside.